Water's Edge.
Now we're going to see, like, the next 2 weeks, some of the coolest stories in the Bible. Like, I'm excited about the next 2 weeks because I can't wait to share them with you because, like, amazing things happen. Now, one of the things that we see that Joseph never did is he never quit. It would have been easy. And he had some opportunities to do so, but he didn't quit. He continued. And years later, there would be another person, Jesus. Trust me, he had more than enough opportunities to quit, but he didn't do that. He continued. Like, when the people started mocking him, like, right before his death, he could say, whatever, like, I came here to save you. You treat me like this, like, good luck. He could have said that, but he didn't. He could have quit, but he continued. They put, like, the crown of thorn on his head, and they beat him with a leather strap, and the pain had to be agonizing, and he was God. He could have stopped this, but he didn't. He didn't quit. He continued. Even in the end, like, they were so brutal, and it got so tough, and what did Jesus do? He prayed for them. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He didn't quit. He continued. And I want to let you know, like, if life is just a little bit too much right now, if the recovery is slower than you think it should be, if the responsibilities are greater than the resources, don't quit. Continue. Because hope and blessing and prosperity and healing is just right on the other side of where you are. You can only take the next step, and you don't know which next step gets you to that place, but you'll never get there unless you keep taking the next steps. Don't give up on the relationship. Don't give up on the dream. Don't give up on the healing. Keep at it. Don't quit. Continue. And the last one.
Watch the waters pop before us now. Come and see what he has done for us. Tell the world of his great love. Our God is God to save. Our God is God to save. That God arise. That God arise. Our God reigns now and forever. He reigns now and forever. And his enemies will run for sure. And the church will stand and she will endure. He holds the keys of life, our Lord. Dead has no sing, no final word. Our God is God who saves. Our God is God who saves. Let God arise. Let God arise. Our God reigns now and forever. He reigns now and forever. God arise. Let God arise. Our God reigns now and forever. He reigns now and forever. Our God is God who saves. 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 Let God arise. Let God arise.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Water's Edge. My name's Michelle Boniwell. I'm part of the staff here, and we are so glad that you chose to spend your Sunday morning with us. If you're watching online, thank you so much for joining us. I know we have several vans watching this morning, so Mission Trip kiddos, if you're watching, say hello, let us know where you are. For those of you who've been following along, our senior high youth mission trip are heading back from Alexandria today. They should be pulling back in about 4:30, so if you guys can just continue to pray for them, that they will continue to have safe travels. And if you want to catch up on what they've been doing, you can check all that out online at weomaha.com and on our social media pages. If you're a guest with us today, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to stop by our connections table on your way out. We have a gift for you and would love to meet you and answer any questions you may have. If you're joining us online, you can fill out our online Connect card, and somebody will be in contact with you to answer questions and get to know you a little better. Some things we have going on here at the church. You probably noticed on your way in, we do have Kona Ice in the beanery here as a treat for you guys today. I've got mine right here. It's just our way of saying thank you for being a part of our community. So make sure you stop by there, grab yourself a coffee, a snow cone, maybe both on your way out. And I encourage you, as you do that, meet someone new while you're out there. Say hello and get to know some new folks. Now, the other thing we have going on coming up is We Serve Weeks. In the past, we've done We Serve Sunday, where we shut down services for the day and go join the community and serve. This year, we're doing it over a 2-week period, and we have projects all over the greater Omaha area. So we encourage you guys to sign up for some of those projects. They have things for people of all ages and all abilities. It's stuff you can do individually or as groups. So you can go to weomaha.com/serve to find out more about that. And be sure to check those periodically, as we will be adding more sites as we get them. At this time, today is also Communion Sunday, I almost forgot. So if you forgot to grab a communion cup on your way in, if you'll just raise your hand, one of our greeters will bring that to you. This time, if you'll stand as you're able and join the worship team in song.
Good morning, church. This first one's called Blessed Be Your Name. Sing it out with us this morning. Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I turn back to praise. When darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. The sun shining down on me. The world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. On the road marked with suffering, there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. And when the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Oh, you give and take away. You give and take away. Our hearts will choose to say, well, blessed be your name. Yeah, you give and take away. Yeah, you give and take away. Our heart will choose to say, well, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Oh, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Give and take away. You give and take away. Our hearts will choose to say, well, blessed be your name.
Oh, shame is a prison as cruel as a grave. Shame is a robber and he's come to take my name. Oh, love is my redeemer, lifting me up from the ground. Love is the power where my freedom song is found. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, 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 fear is a liar with a smooth and velvet tongue. Fear is a tyrant, he's always telling me to run. Oh, love is a resurrection. Love is a trumpet sound. Love is my weapon. I'm gonna take my giants down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. walked out of the grave I'm walking to. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. Yeah, oh yeah. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. If you walked out of the grave I'm walking to. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave, gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet, gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.
Thank you, church. You may be seated.
Hey, I'm Craig Finstead, one of the pastors here. Just want to welcome you all. If you're new to us, thanks so much for worshiping with us. We'd love to just have you worship with us again. Love to get to know you better, have you be part of our church family. We want to be a better church around here, and we know that you have the gifts and the skills and the interests and the passions to help us do that. So just love to get to know you. Thank you so much for worshiping with us today. Today's the last day of our endowment drive, so many of you were given the legacy brochure, and it also has a pledge card. Today's the last day. We'll talk about this until the first of the year. So the endowment is different than the yearly giving that y'all do so great with, and the Capitol building, the capital campaigns that bought the land in the building that we're in right now. The endowment is going to set us up for success in future generations. So for example, I think we have 80 people right now who are on a mission trip. They're going to be coming home this afternoon. There's a number of these students who were able to go because of very large memorial gifts that were given. And the endowment is going to help us have more of those where we can invest in the next generation. One fund is going to be children and youth ministry. One fund is going to be leadership development. And then another fund is going to be, what's the third fund? I created this thing, I should know. It's missions. So those three things, missions, leadership development, and children and youth. Now, we're not asking for large gifts. We're just asking for 150 one-time gifts to get us started. So the pledge card, one option is $12. That's $1 a month. One's $52, which is $1 a week. One's $365, which is $1 a day, unless it's leap year. And if you want to give us $366 instead, I'd gladly accept the extra dollar. There's a $100 option on there for those of you who are OCD and like to have zeros at the end of your check and not fives or twos or anything like that. So yeah, just fill this out today. Those of you online, weomaha.com/give/legacy. You can put them in the offering boxes. We have a endowment table, but I encourage you to do it today while you're thinking about it. We're, I think, around 45 gifts so far. Our goal is 150, so we have a bit of work to do. Now, the really cool thing is I had a conversation with one of our donors on Friday, and he's excited about this. So he's going to match any gifts this morning up to $5,000. So for example, if you give $365, it'll be 730, is that right? I can take 10% of any number really quickly. I can't do some of that more complicated math, but this is going to be a blessing to future generations, so I encourage you to be one of the original people that gets our endowment started. It's really cool we're doing this. All right, so we're in week 3 of a 4-week series called Defining Moments. We've looked at 2 defining moments in Joseph's life already. I got one today, and we're going to look at one next week as well. Now, last week we were just in Genesis chapter 37. This week it's chapters, for those of you who are following along, whether you're at home or here in person, it's going to be chapters 39 through 45. So we're going to be here for a while. I have pizza coming in at noon. Feel to go get some Kona ice or some beanery during the sermon. I have, so this isn't really a challenge you want to do a sermon on, though, because it's such a long story. But it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible, probably my favorite in the Old Testament. It's where my oldest son's name comes from. This should tell you something about the affinity that I have toward this story. So just to review last week, Joseph was thrown into a well by his brothers. They had wanted to kill him. The oldest brother said, no, just throw him into a well. He was actually trying to save Joseph, but before he knew about it, they had a better idea. They sold him to some travelers. So they kind of went from doing something really bad, like wanting to kill him, to something just kind of bad, like selling him off as a slave. So the 10 brothers go back to the dad, say the kid's dead. Jacob, the dad, mourns. So now remember, Joseph was sold off to the travelers. They're on their way to Egypt, so we pick it up in chapter 39, verse 1. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar. So Potiphar would be, so Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. Potiphar would have been one of Pharaoh's right-hand men. So he was a somebody. He would have been one of the top rulers of the country. So he is purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was a captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So we just have to go one more verse, and we're going to find our first thing that we learn about Joseph. Now, in chapter 39, I think you see this 3 or 4 times. You also see it in chapter 40 and 41, I think, one time. But it's something you need to know about Joseph. So we find it in the first 5 words in verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. So I did a baptism at the first service, and we take the water and the oil, and especially with the oil, it's the anointing. It's a symbol that the Holy Spirit is with us. So Jesus promises us that he is with us always. It's the last thing he says, and I'm with you always until the end of the age. One of the things you're going to hear in Scripture more than you hear anything else is do not be afraid. And when anybody says, do not be afraid, whether it's the prophet speaking for God or God speaking directly to the people, it's usually followed up by this little phrase, do not be afraid, for I am with you. So this is not unique to Joseph. Just because he's Jacob's son, just because he's Isaac's grandson, just because he's Abraham's great-grandson, it doesn't make him special here. The Lord is with him, and the Lord is with you, and the Lord is with me. Now, he did some really cool things because the Lord was with him. He was able to interpret dreams. That was kind of his occupation. He made really good decisions. He was a visionary, and this is probably because of the dreams he was able to interpret. And then he was an amazing leader as well. But I believe that his greatest accomplishment in life was none of those things. I think his greatest accomplishment in life was a spiritual task. And this is the story that I'm going to tell you this morning. It's a story of forgiveness. So forgiveness principle number 1, we get this through verse 2, is a life that rejects forgiveness is a life that is ruled by guilt and resentment. So when the Lord is with us, we are forgiven people and we are forgiving people. Now, some will reject forgiveness and think it's for the weak, think it's old-fashioned, think that it's un-American. And if this is you, your life is going to be filled with guilt and resentment. Now, someone once said, forgive and forget. That's like, no, it's not good. It's not possible. You know, forgiveness and forgetting are two totally different things. Now, forgetting is not always going to be possible. And I want to tell you this, forgetting is not always going to be best. So if I were to explain forgiveness to somebody, I jotted this down this week. Here's what I came up with. Forgiveness is like this. Okay, you hurt me. I could and maybe I should end our relationship. I probably can't forget what has happened, and I'm most likely going to actually carry some woundedness and some hurts for a while. But I do want you to know that I understand you're human, and I'm not going to let your mistake diminish my future. So I forgive you. Now, you can do whatever you want with this forgiveness, but I'm choosing to move forward. I am choosing grace over pain, and I am choosing healing over hurting. So this is what we do when the Lord is with us. When we're able to pull off forgiveness, grace is going to happen in our life. When we forgive, it's who we're created to be. So remember, we're created in God's image. God is a forgiving God. So then us, as restored people, we're forgiving people because we're created in God's image. Now, there's a lot that happens in chapters 39, 40, and 41, and because you don't want to be here till 2 p.m., I'll give you the Cliff Notes. So one of the things that happens is Potiphar's wife has a thing for Joseph. Joseph, the Lord is with him. He makes good decisions. He wants nothing, no part of this. So she makes up a lie, tells Potiphar that Joseph made an advance toward her. Potiphar gets angry. He throws Joseph in prison. So Joseph goes to prison, and he's like the prisoner of the year. He got that award, I think, because everyone just loved him. In fact, he almost kind of became like the de facto warden over the part of the prison he was in. He started interpreting more dreams when he was in prison, and 2 of these were going to be for 2 of Pharaoh's. So now we're talking like the top level, not Potiphar anymore, 2 of Pharaoh's right-hand men. One of the dreams reinstated one of the right-hand men, so then a couple years later. So remember last week, Joseph was like 17. He goes to Egypt. He works for Potiphar for a while. He goes to jail. Now a couple years has passed in jail, so he's probably still early 20s at this point. Now Pharaoh has had 2 really bizarre dreams, and he does not know what these dreams mean. So the guy that was in prison that works for Pharaoh says, hey, there's this guy, he's a Hebrew guy, but he interpreted my dream and got me out of jail. I'm back here, you need to check him out. So Pharaoh calls the warden. The warden releases Joseph. The Bible says that Joseph changed clothes, which is probably a good idea after being in prison for a couple years. And he also shaved, which is probably a good idea after being in prison for a couple years. Then he goes and talks to Pharaoh. Pharaoh gives Joseph both the dreams, and Joseph says, well, both the dreams mean the same thing. The dreams mean this, there's going to be great abundance and a great harvest for 7 years. And then for the next 7 years, there's going to be a great famine. And so what we need to do is we need to take all the grain from the first 7 years, the stuff we don't eat. We need to save it as much as we can because we're going to need it during the famine so people can eat. Now, Pharaoh loved this. This dream hadn't even come true yet. This is still in the same conversation. And Pharaoh, he said to Joseph in verse 41, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Now, that's pretty good for a dream interpretation that hasn't come true yet. So Joseph, he's all in for this. He has been promoted from a prisoner to president in 5 minutes. And he's down with that. So guess what happens? There's 7 years of abundance. So after 7 years, it stops raining, and the crops stop producing, and there's a famine. So in verse 57, people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. So guess who's hungry? Remember those guys that threw them into a well? Their crops, they're not growing. Their dad, Jacob, he's at this time a grumpy old man who's hungry. Have any of you ever been around a grumpy old man who's hungry? Yeah, both my boys. Corey, you have. So Tom, I assume he's talking about you. Will you stand now? Just teasing. Corey, there's many reasons we love you, and that's going to be one of them right there. So Corey, you're actually lucky too. This sermon's about forgiveness, so we're going to give Tom a chance to practice this. So when Jacob heard that the grain was available in Egypt, this is 42 verses 1 and 2, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I have heard there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive, otherwise we'll die." So the Amtrak wasn't quite built yet, so they had to take these donkeys and they walked, and it wasn't an easy walk. Remember, there's a famine, it was dry. So they hoofed it to Egypt. They find the guy in charge of things. They didn't have a clue who he was. They weren't looking for him. Now he's dressed up a little bit different. It would have been surprising to know who he was. But man, can you believe when he saw them coming, like all 10 of them? Just like the mixed emotions that must have been going through his mind. On one hand, like, these guys threw me into a well and they sold me off into slavery, and then on the other hand, like, these guys are my brothers. They're human, they made a mistake, it was a bad thing they did, but they're my brothers. So I think Joseph's heart stopped. I think the brothers only wanted their food, and verse 8 tells us, although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. Now, oftentimes, and this gives us principle number 2, because I think this is oftentimes the way it works where there's conflict and relational dysfunction, that the offended party usually has a pretty good memory. The offending party, not so much. So they didn't recognize him, he recognized them. So the principle is this: the offending party generally has less of a memory than the offended party. But what forgiveness does, and remember the Lord was with Joseph, so what forgiveness does is it moves our memory to better places. So Joseph, he had a dream about his brothers. He also wanted to make sure they were legit. I think he actually wanted to have a little bit of fun with them too. So what Joseph does next is he accuses them of being spies. Now, have any of you ever been accused of being a spy before? Yeah, I can't imagine it's like the best feeling. We probably don't get too much of that today, but they reply, like, we're all brothers. Like, we're members of the same family. I love what they say next. They say, we are honest men, sir. We're not spies. So he's thinking, honest men, I'd like to see your definition of deceitful. Like, you're honest men that threw me into this well, and then, like, you got a better offer and you sold me off into slavery. Like, that's honest. Now look at forgiveness so far here. Like, we have 3 more chapters before, like, forgiveness actually happens. But there's a principle here that's important, especially like if you're parents of a kid, which I guess you wouldn't be parents of anything else other than a kid. The kids can be different ages. But forgiveness is grace. It's not enabling. So he didn't just say right here on the spot, I'm going to, like, totally let you guys off the hook. Things are cool. Take all the food you want. Like, life is good. He didn't do that. That would be called enabling. He later practiced forgiveness. So principle number 3 is this: forgiveness is not permission to continue self-destructive behaviors. So for example, if you have like a junior in high school and there's like a curfew that is 11:30 that's been agreed upon by both parties, and the kid comes home like at 3 a.m., and you say, I forgive you, just go to bed, you're glad you're well. So then next week, when it's Saturday, the kid is like out and it's 11 o'clock, what's the kid gonna do? The kid's saying, well, let's go home at 3 o'clock because last week they forgave me and they'll forgive me again this week. So that's actually not forgiveness, that's enabling, and that's all sorts of trouble are created by that. So enabling is different than forgiveness. Sometimes forgiveness gives a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, but But sometimes forgiveness says, and I scribbled this down this week, I feel you're taking advantage. This is the difference between forgiveness and enabling. I feel you're taking advantage of my forgiveness. Me letting you off the hook isn't doing either of us any good. Therefore, I believe it's better for you, and I believe it's better for me if we have like clear expectations and strong boundaries of how we are going to relate to each other. I care about you, and I care about me that much. You know, so like now when the kid comes home at 3 o'clock for the first time, the curfew is 11, you say to the kid, like, this is not fine. There's like nothing good that happens at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning. Like, we agreed on this 11 o'clock thing. I love you. I love you a lot. But for the next 2 Saturday nights, you're not going to go out. You're going to put your phone down, and we're just going to do some really cool stuff together. And then after that, you can go back out like in 3 weeks, but your curfew is 11 o'clock. And I just want you to know, like, I'm cool with you. I love you. But, you know, you didn't do what we agreed you're going to do. So that's like what forgiveness without enabling can look like if you're the parent of a high school junior. Not that I would know anything about that. So Joseph messes around with them a little bit more. So they talk about this younger brother they have and this brother that died, which was him. Then they talk about the younger brother, and he misses his little brother, and he also wants to like see how serious these people are. So it's okay, if you got this little brother, I'm actually going to keep one of you tenants collateral. You're going to stay here in jail. The others, you can go get the little brother, come back, and I'll give you all the grain you want. So do you remember Reuben from last week? He was the oldest brother, and he was actually the good guy. He said, let's just throw him into the well. He can just die slowly there. Then Reuben was going to go save him. So Reuben, the oldest brother, had some really good intentions. So Reuben, he doesn't do so well here. In verse 22, Reuben's frustrated. Like, they're on their way back to Israel. They're going to go get Benjamin. Jacob, there's no way that he's going to let him have Benjamin because one brother's already dead. Like, he didn't let him go with him. So he's frustrated. He says, didn't I tell you not to sin against that boy? But you wouldn't listen. And now we have to answer for his blood. So Reuben, in basically a few sentences, has said the most 4 hated words in the English language when they're strung together. Does anybody know what that is? He basically said, I told you so. Have you been told I told you so in the last, 6 months? So here's forgiveness principle number 4. I told you so is never a helpful phrase. I have nothing to add to this. If you don't get this, I can't explain it to you. If you get this, I don't need to explain it to you. So they travel back. They say to Jacob, all right, there's this crazy president there, and he wants us to bring Benjamin. He took one of us. He's holding him in jail. But we take Benjamin back. We get the brother back. We get the grain. And Jacob's not in my life. My son Joseph is already dead. I'm not going to, send him back to Egypt to die as well. Then the brothers reason with the dad, Jacob, and they said, well, if he doesn't come back, we're all going to starve and we're all going to die anyway. So Jacob was like, okay, good point. Benjamin, go with the brothers to Egypt. So they go back, and in verse 16, it starts to get really cool. So when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, and this would have been a huge moment for him. Imagine a person you love and you think you're never, ever going to see them again. So all of a sudden, he sees this little brother in the distance, and this was a big time for him. So he said to the manager of the household, these men will eat with me this noon. Take them inside the palace, then go slaughter an animal and prepare a big feast. So the man did as Joseph told him and took them into Joseph's palace. So I love, do you see the foreshadowing here? This reminds me of the story of the prodigal son that you can read later in the Gospel of Luke. And it actually reminds me of the 12 sitting around the table with Jesus. And We're going to do that one in a little bit. So it gives us forgiveness principle number 5, and that's forgiveness is not conditional. Forgiveness has no conditions. So the brothers did what they needed to do to get the grain. They did not do anything that they needed to do to get forgiveness, because we can't earn forgiveness. It can only be given. It comes with absolutely no conditions. So if I were to say to you, I will forgive you if, that's actually not forgiveness. If it was, I forgive you if, it would be called for-earnness and not forgiveness. It's something you've earned and not been given. You know, forgiveness does not come with the expectation that the other party needs to apologize. True forgiveness doesn't have any conditions. It's the highest act of love with absolutely no strings attached. Now, he saw Benjamin from afar. Now Benjamin was up close. They're starting to gather around the table. So Joseph looked at his brother Benjamin. We see this in verse 29. The son of his own mother. So this would be important because with the 12 boys, there was 4 moms. The youngest 2, Benjamin and Joseph, they had the same mom, Rachel. So Joseph would have had 2 really close connections with Benjamin. One is Benjamin was the brother who didn't betray him. And number 2, him and Benjamin have the same mom. So Joseph looked at his brother Benjamin, the son of his own mother. Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? Joseph asked. May God be gracious to you, my son. Then, listen what happens next. Then Joseph hurried from the room because he was overcome with emotion for his brother. And he went into the private room where he broke down and he wept. So this starts to give us forgiveness principle number 6. There's a lot going on in Joseph's mind right now, and Joseph understands this, and we need to understand it as well. Forgiveness is not an act of weakness. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of strength. So culture might actually try to teach us that like forgiveness is like what weak people do. No, weak people cannot pull off forgiveness. Strong people pull off forgiveness. I'll tell you what the easy thing to do is. The easy thing is revenge. Let's get back at them. Whether it's passive aggressive, whether we hurt their reputation, whether we give them some harsh words, like that's the easy stuff to do. The easy stuff to do is to avoid it and to brush it under the rug and pretend it never happened. The easy thing to do is just walk away and say like, this relationship is like so messed up and it's so beyond repair that I'm just done. Those are the easy things. Retaliation, avoidance, denial, they're convenient in the short term, but they're going to be devastating in the long term. Forgiveness, it's not for the weak or the faint of heart. It's the ultimate act of strength. Now, here's the deal. Like the most rewarding things in life, think about the most rewarding things in life. The most rewarding things in life are challenging, and they're difficult, and they're tough. And forgiveness is at the top of the list here. But for those who figure out how to re-gift the forgiveness that God has given to us, the blessing is worth the effort and then some. All right, so now it's time to eat. So in verse 34, I love what he does here. This is funny. Joseph, so let me tell you a story first. So there's a reason he's not doing this. So my soon-to-be high school freshman, David, he was at football practice at Russell last year, and I think they usually got done about 4:30, so I would go pick him up, and he wanted to go to McDonald's, which I would just get him like a snack. And so do you know at McDonald's they have like a family meal box you can get? And it has like 2 cheeseburgers, 2 fries, and 20 McNuggets. So David actually ordered the family meal box. And like I said, well, is this for us to share? He goes, no. So like I ordered the salad, like with the Southwest one with the grilled chicken that I always get the same thing there. And so he ate like every scrap that was in that family box. I'd never seen anything like it before. And I looked it up online. It was like 4,600 calories or something like that. And so then like I'm just working down the basement. He's upstairs on a video game, so there's a whole floor between us. And he comes down at 7:30, and you know what he wanted? He wanted to know what's for dinner. So that's not why Joseph did this to Benjamin. So Joseph filled up the plates with food from his own table, giving Benjamin 5 times as much as he gave the others. Can you imagine that? Like you're sitting down with like 12 people and this one person like gets all this food and like you just have like a normal helping, and that's just the way it worked out. So they feasted and drank freely with him. This gets us forgiveness principle number 7. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean a fully restored relationship. So I want you to be like one of those 10 brothers sitting at the table and you have a nice meal in front of you. Like, you don't deserve that. You're getting more than you deserve there. Now, the little brother who didn't do anything and they don't know any of this stuff's going on, like, they're just going to have to deal with it. He has more food than them because they still got more than they deserve. Now, do you know what the theological term is when you get more than you deserve? It's called grace. Now, it doesn't mean, like, when you forgive someone that the relationship is fully going to be restored. It doesn't mean that you get, like, 5 times as much food or at least as much food as everybody else. So sometimes the relationship is fully restored. Sometimes the relationship, and I've observed this with people in our church, like there's been an offense and there's been forgiveness and the relationship has actually emerged as stronger. But sometimes it's best and sometimes it's only possible to forgive from a distance. Sometimes forgiveness says, I'm going to try to be your friend again. And sometimes forgiveness, it says goodbye. It says, you've hurt me. I just can't do this anymore. I respect you. I love you. I forgive you. But we're going to move on, and we're going to move on in different directions. And I believe this is both best for both of us. Like, sometimes forgiveness has to do that. All right, so then the moment of forgiveness happens. This happens in Genesis chapter 45, verse 4. So I imagine this moment, like, it's such a cool moment. Like, Joseph has been going through a lot, and like I said, this is his biggest accomplishment. I really think it is. Not the presidency, not the visions, not the food distribution, like the forgiveness of 10 people who threw you into a well and then sold you off as a slave. Like, that dwarfs that spiritual relational task that he's doing here. Like, that dwarfs anything else he did in life. So then Joseph said, please come closer. And they came closer, and they still didn't see it. And then he said to them, and I imagine like he looked all 10 of them in the eye, and he said, I'm Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. So the conversation continues, but we're going to pause for forgiveness principle number 8. Forgiveness doesn't usually happen because the offending party has changed. Forgiveness happens because the offended party cares more about the future than the past. Now, the brothers here, all they did is they went and got Benjamin, and they brought him back because they wanted grain. They didn't say sorry. They didn't know they had to because they didn't know it was him. It didn't matter because, like, forgiveness isn't about the offended party. It's about the offended party, caring more about the future than the past. Now, the forgiveness continues in verses 14 and 15. So, weeping with joy. So what's that third word? I love that third word, weeping with joy. He embraced Benjamin. I remember when Betty was a little guy, like probably 6 or 7, and we used to have season tickets to the Rose Theater. And one year they had Joseph in the Technicolor dream coat there. And like when this moment happened in the play, and Benny had heard this story, I'd told it to him a dozen times. I just kind of like peeked over at him, and like he just had this great big grin. Because even as a 6-year-old, I think he knew the gospel story that there's great joy in forgiveness. There's great joy in reconciliation. So he embraced Benjamin, and Benjamin did the same. And then Joseph kissed each of his brothers, and he wept over them. This was a moment of great joy, and now it's also a moment of freedom. And after that, they began talking freely with him. Before, everybody was a prisoner to the past, and now they're all free for the future. So this gets us to principle number 9. Forgiveness is not primarily for the other party. So what did Joseph get out of forgiving his brothers? He got joy, and he got freedom. Now, there's no guarantee that the brothers were going to accept this. So you might say to somebody, okay, Fred, I forgive you, or Sally, I forgive you. They may not think they need to be forgiven. They may be in such a bad place that they just don't want to accept it. They want nothing to do with you. They may be in such a hurt place that they can't get over that they hurt you as bad as they did, and they're not there yet. You can't control the other person's reaction to your forgiveness. You can only accept the blessings that God gives you. And when we forgive, God is going to give us joy, and God is going to give us freedom. And last I checked, most people I know could use some more joy and some more freedom. When we're able to forgive, what we do is we set the prisoner free, and the prisoner is us. So in life, you got this choice. You can either keep reliving or you can keep forgiving, which takes us to principle number 10. This is the last one I got. Do you really want your future to be comprised of reliving, basically like watching the video of some of the most painful moments of your life over and over and over again? Like if I told you that, if I ask you what your least favorite movie is you've ever watched, and you told me it was some movie, and then I can't say give you a tape because no one does the tape anymore. I can't even say give you a disc because no one does the disc anymore. I gave you the Amazon code where you could watch this movie. You wouldn't watch the movie because it was a bad movie. And once was more than enough. But as I look around, I see people watching the same old bad movies of their life over and over and over and over again. And forgiveness says, it's time to create some new movies. It's time to create some better movies. It's time to let go of all this stuff from the past and say, I'm going to set the prisoner free, and the prisoner is me, and now the prisoner is free with joy, to create some new movies, some better movies. That's what forgiveness does. Stop watching the old movies. You don't need to watch them anymore. Start creating the new ones, better ones, holy ones, sacred ones, hopeful ones. So I think this story is so cool because it does foreshadow a meal that would happen thousands of years later. So this time it wasn't Joseph who was sitting around the table with about a dozen people or so. It was Jesus himself. And these are people that would have offended Jesus. Some did a little bit. They didn't believe him. They didn't believe in him. I mean, they saw him take a few fish and a couple loaves of bread and feed thousands of people. And the next day they were doubting. There's Peter who denied Jesus 3 times. And he even served this meal to Judas, the one who betrayed him and ultimately was responsible for his death. Remember, it didn't have anything to do with the 12. It had to do with the 1. So Jesus, he took the bread, he blessed it. He broke the bread and said, friends, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me. So Jesus says, eat this bread and remember him. And here's what I want us to remember. Jesus went around and he told us, he said, I came to seek and to save. I came to save people from their sins. I came to forgive. Jesus, he told parables and he taught lessons. How many times should we forgive, Jesus? Should we give 7 times? And Jesus says, no, 7, you're kind of getting warmed up. Maybe 7 times 70, and that's going to get you closer. Ultimately, Jesus forgave people in his life, and upon his death, he forgave all of us. So the top layer of bread is just really a thin layer. It sounds like some of you have already gotten started. But if you'll take that out now the best you can. And if you don't have a communion cup, just raise your hand, and we have people right now that are taking those around. So we invite you and encourage you to partake. And by the way, this is for all of us. It's not for some of us. You don't have to be a member of our church. We're all children of God, brothers and sisters to Jesus Christ. So I invite you now to take and eat and remember that Jesus is a God of forgiveness.
forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted, but you were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, and I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you.
So later in the meal, Jesus took the wine. He blessed the wine, gave thanks, and he said, "Friends, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been given for you and the forgiveness of your sins. So when you drink this, do so in remembrance of me." And as you drink this, and we're all going to drink together in just a moment, I want you to remember that you're forgiven. Like, the things that you haven't gotten over yet, like from your past, like the worst things you've done, the little things you've done, like you're forgiven. God says, okay, the slate is blank. Like, live like the slate is blank. Now, we get to be like God, and God is forgiving, and so can we at our best. So as we take this, I want us to remember Jesus, who was both, as God, he was the forgiver. You know, so as his followers, we are forgiven because of his grace, and we get to be forgiving because of his grace. So take and drink. This is the blood of Christ that is poured out for you.
And I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted, but you were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, and I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you.
Well, let us pray. Lord, we are just so grateful for the gift of forgiveness. We get a glimpse of it with Joseph and his brothers. We get a more full experience with Jesus and his followers. God, I pray right now that this is not an academic experience for any of us, that we may have learned a few things this morning, or we heard again something we thought was helpful. God, I pray that this is like an emotional and a spiritual and a relational experience for us, that we can embrace the forgiveness that you give to us, and that we can live joyfully and free as people who are forgiven. And God, as we're forgiven, help us to be restored into your image and be forgiving people that can extend the same grace to others, so that these chains of hurt and these chains of bitterness can be broken, and we can be released, and we can be free. You know, God, I don't know right now what this means for each of us who are individuals here. Maybe it's a conversation with the person we're sitting right next to. Maybe it's a phone call to a person we haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe it's just a move that we need to make so that we're not captivated and captives to our painful past. And we keep rewatching those movies, but we now see the joy and the freedom and the possibility of forgiveness, and now the life that is in front of us, and that there's new movies out there that are just waiting to be created. So God, we thank you for Jesus, who taught about forgiveness, who forgave when he lived in this world, and continues to forgive now in heaven with you. And Lord, it's in one voice that we pray together the prayer that the forgiving Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
We all get to leave here today as fully forgiving people, and then we get to go extend that forgiveness to others. So as you leave here today, just a reminder, if you have one of these endowment cards, there'll be a table out there. They can answer any of your questions. And there's also going to be Kona and the Beanery out there. So those are on us. Feel free to grab one of those treats, hang out. It's beautiful out. We'd love to hang out with you out there, and we'll see you next week at the Water's Edge.